Introduction: The Architecture of Awakening. You are listening to Mindscape Mastery, a journey into the hidden structures that shape human consciousness. Welcome to a space where insight meets transformation. There are moments in existence when you discover the real battle isn't external, it's internal. You're not wrestling with circumstances as much as you're contending with invisible forces within your own consciousness. Perhaps you've noticed yourself repeating identical mistakes, not from lack of intelligence, but because something beneath awareness keeps steering your choices. Maybe you've promised yourself you'll respond calmly to frustration, yet at the slightest trigger, irritation erupts like a geyser. Maybe you resolve to speak with confidence, but when the moment arrives, doubt paralyzes you into silence. Maybe you've set intentions for transformation, only to watch months dissolve while old patterns persist. This is the invisible architecture of unexamined mental habits. Every person operates according to internal blueprints, invisible algorithms whispering instructions before conscious awareness catches up. These blueprints weren't created overnight. They were carved slowly by the environment you developed in, the society that surrounded you, the experiences that marked you, the assumptions you absorbed without questioning. Usually we're unaware of them. We believe we're choosing freely, when actually our choices have been rehearsed thousands of times by cognitive habits we didn't consciously design. We live on autopilot. Identical conflicts, identical doubts, identical fears, identical self-sabotage, until eventually we recognize, if I don't understand my own mind, my mind will control me. When you first see this clearly, it can feel overwhelming. You might question whether transformation is even possible. But here's the crucial insight. Mental patterns aren't destiny. They're simply habits of cognition, and habits can be interrupted, reshaped, and reconstructed. Neuroscience confirms that the brain possesses plasticity. It rewires itself with every new thought, every deliberate decision, every moment of awareness. This means regardless of how long you've operated within a particular cycle, you can step outside it. You can design new patterns that serve growth rather than limitation. The core philosophy: observer and observed. You are not your thoughts. You are the consciousness that observes thoughts. This distinction may seem subtle, but it's revolutionary. When you identify as your thoughts, every fear becomes factual, every doubt becomes identity, every memory becomes destiny. You're swept away, powerless. But when you recognize yourself as the observer, everything shifts. Thoughts become phenomena you can witness, evaluate, and redirect. They're not commands, they're options. And you, the observer, hold authority to choose which ones merit attention and which you'll release. Consider a river flowing through a canyon. If you're in the river, you're swept along, powerless. But standing on the shore, you see the river for what it is: movement, not identity. You can observe it, step into it, or walk away. Your mind functions similarly. Most people exist inside the thought stream, carried away without awareness. Mastery begins when you step to the shore and recognize, I am not the stream. I am the witness. I have choice. Chapter 1. Recognizing the Hidden Architecture. There's a structure that appears functional from the outside, organized, capable, effective. But beneath the surface lies hidden design flaws that shape everything within it. This is how consciousness operates. Externally, your life may appear functional or even successful. But internally, beneath behavioral surfaces, lies the hidden architecture of your cognition. That architecture determines whether you interpret setbacks as education or as confirmation of inadequacy, whether you perceive others as allies or threats, whether you rise to challenges or retreat into avoidance. Until you recognize that architecture, you will continue operating within structures that feel unstable, even when others admire appearances. The struggle is that most people were never taught to examine internal structures with clarity. Education systems teach what to think, but rarely how to think. Social systems reward quick answers and conformity, but discourage deep questioning. You develop layers of thought upon thought, assumption upon assumption, until you're operating within an inherited consciousness, not a chosen one. You believe your thoughts are original, when actually they're echoes of patterns formed years ago. Psychologically, these cognitive patterns form early. A child repeatedly criticized develops patterns of self-doubt. A child overprotected develops patterns of fear. A child receiving conditional affection develops patterns of perfectionism. These patterns solidify through repetition until they become default reality interpretation mechanisms. Because they operate below conscious awareness, they feel natural. Self-doubt feels like humility. Fear feels like wisdom. Perfectionism feels like excellence. But they're distortions, subtle misconceptions whispered until mind accepts them as truth. Why do people remain stuck? Because the human brain prioritizes efficiency over accuracy. It creates cognitive shortcuts that enable quick responses without questioning. The breakthrough, awareness is liberation. You cannot change what you refuse to see. But once you illuminate your cognitive patterns, they begin losing power. Imagine entering a dark room and seeing shadows on walls. You feel fear because shapes resemble threats. But when you activate light, you realize they were only coats hanging on furniture. This happens when you bring awareness to thoughts. What felt like absolute truth reveals itself as merely pattern, and patterns can be modified. To develop critical thinking, train yourself to pause and ask, what narrative am I constructing right now? In stress, the narrative might be, I always fail. In conflict, they're against me. In opportunity, I'm not ready. These narratives feel automatic, but they're not reality. They're blueprints etched into consciousness. The moment you see them, you open possibility for rewriting. Chapter 2, Breaking the Cycle of Automatic Processing. There arrives a moment when you realize that much of what you call thinking isn't genuine thought at all. It's reactive processing. The mind operates on autopilot, generating identical conclusions it always has, without genuine examination, without creativity, without depth. You believe you're making choices, but your decisions were predetermined by invisible machinery of habit. This is automatic processing, and it silently consumes years of existence. Picture someone driving a familiar route. Initially, they're attentive, noticing every detail. But after countless repetitions, their mind drifts. Their body still navigates. Eyes still register input, but they're no longer genuinely present. Upon arrival, they realize they can't recall significant portions of the journey. This is how most people exist. They wake, work, interact, but their minds are locked in patterns so familiar they cease noticing. They live by default rather than by design. The danger isn't merely that automatic processing keeps you unconscious. It shapes reality without consent. If your automatic pattern is self-criticism, every error becomes evidence of inadequacy. If your automatic pattern is anxiety, every silence becomes potential catastrophe. If your automatic pattern is judgment, every person becomes adversary before speaking. You perceive not truth, but pattern reflection. And because you perceive it, you believe it. The cycle self-perpetuates. Why people get trapped automatic processing is efficient. The brain is a survival mechanism, seeking energy conservation by repeating what it already knows. Reflection, questioning, and creativity require effort. Autopilot requires none. Without awareness, the brain invariably chooses minimal resistance. It whispers, why think deeply when you can think quickly? Why question when you can assume? Why pause when you can react? What begins as shortcut becomes prison. Breaking this cycle requires a shift as radical as waking from sleep. It begins with deciding to decelerate. Automatic thought operates at high velocity. It leaps to conclusions before you notice the question. To interrupt it, you must insert space. That space might be as simple as a breath before responding, a moment of silence before judging, a pause before assuming that I end that silence. You create possibility for choice. Example, the reinterpretation. Imagine receiving a message from a friend that feels distant or cold. Your automatic thought, they're angry at me. Without pause, you react defensive, withdrawn, hurt. But if you stop, breathe, and ask, what else could this mean? You might recognize they were simply exhausted, distracted, or struggling themselves. That single pause could preserve a relationship. This is awareness transforming automatic reaction into conscious response. Metaphorically, the tinted lens automatic thinking is like traversing life wearing colored glasses. Everything appears tinted, but because you've worn them indefinitely, you've forgotten they exist. You believe the world genuinely possesses that hue. Critical thinking is removing the glasses, holding them before you, and recognizing, Ah, this is why everything appeared that way. The world hasn't changed. You finally perceive clearly. The practice. Creating space to practice breaking cycles. Begin with minor moments. Notice when you feel immediate emotional surges. Anger, fear, shame. Instead of obeying the impulse, pause. Ask, what narrative am I constructing right now? What alternatives could be true? This question creates fissures in the wall. Through them, illumination enters. Over time, you'll notice patterns you never perceived before. You'll recognize how frequently your fear was unfounded, how often your assumptions were incorrect, how often your judgments were unjust. Each realization is liberation. The story of Sophia considered Sophia, who believed people disliked her. Every silence felt like rejection, every glance like condemnation. For years, she lived withdrawn, convinced of unworthiness. One day, she began questioning automatic thoughts. Instead of assuming, she asked, what else could be true? Gradually, she realized silence often meant nothing beyond distraction. Glances were frequently curiosity, not disdain. With each shift, her world transformed. The people hadn't changed, her perception had. She no longer lived in assumption's shadow, but in possibility's light. The invitation in her life is determined not solely by what happens to you, but by how you interpret it. Automatic thinking narrows interpretation to the most restrictive path, usually fear, doubt, or judgment. Conscious thinking expands interpretation toward growth, courage, and truth. The difference between prison and pathway is often just a thought. Chapter 3. The emotional foundations of cognitive patterns. If you examine deeply enough, you'll discover every cognitive pattern connects to emotion. Behind the words your mind whispers lies always a feeling. Fear, shame, pride, hope, longing. Thought are like tree branches, but the roots nourishing them are emotions buried in experiential soil. If you only prune branches, the tree regrows. For lasting transformation, you must address roots. The hidden architecture think of when you felt anger. The thought might have been, they don't respect me. But beneath that thought, the root emotion was hurt. The feeling of being invisible, or imagine avoiding risk. The thought, I'm not prepared. But beneath it, fear. Fear of failure. Fear of judgment. The mind constructs narratives to protect the heart. That's why cognitive patterns feel so convincing. They're not random words. They're shields designed to guard old wounds. Many people remain stuck because they attempt changing thinking through force, repeating affirmations, trying to silence negative voices. Without addressing the emotions fueling them, it's like painting over cracked walls without repairing foundations. Temporarily it appears better, but eventually cracks resurface. The story of Jonathan considered Jonathan, who grew up with father constantly criticizing him. As an adult, every time his supervisor provided feedback, his automatic thought, I'm failing. He felt anxious, defensive, sometimes angry. For years, he believed the problem was his supervisor, but when he finally examined his thoughts, he recognized the pattern. Looking deeper, he found a root, shame planted in childhood. The criticism was no longer about the present. It was a past echoed by naming that emotion and allowing himself to feel it. He began separating past from present. Gradually, the pattern loosened its grip. The powerful shift realizing that most present reactions aren't about the present at all. They're emotional echoes, reverberations of moments long vanished. You're not arguing with your partner. You're reliving an old wound of being unheard. You're not afraid of this opportunity. You're remembering an old failure. You're not angry at your colleague. You're protecting a part once shamed. When you perceive this truth, compassion emerges. You cease condemning yourself for overreacting and begin healing roots. The process the next time a strong cognitive pattern arises, pause. Ask, what am I feeling beneath this thought? Initially, the answer may not emerge. You might only sense discomfort. Stay with it. Breathe. The emotion will surface. Fear, sadness, shame, perhaps longing. Let it exist. Don't suppress it. Allow yourself to feel what you once avoided, then speak to it with kindness. I see you. I understand you're trying to protect me, but I'm safe now. That's how healing begins. Not through force, but through compassion. Metaphor. The garden, imagine your mind as a garden. Some plants are beautiful. Some are invasive. You can cut invasive plants repeatedly, but they'll return because roots remain. Only by extracting roots do you free the soil to cultivate something new. Your emotions are those roots. Bring them into awareness's light, and your mind soil becomes fertile again, ready for new cognitive patterns, new life possibilities. The truth about emotions: your emotions aren't enemies. They're messengers. Fear says, there's something requiring preparation. Sadness says, there's something requiring grief. Anger says, there's something requiring protection. Shame says, there's something requiring acceptance and forgiveness. When you silence these messengers, they amplify through distorted cognitive patterns. When you listen, they soften and thoughts grow clearer. The challenge: not merely notice thoughts, notice emotions fueling them. When you hear self-doubt's voice, ask, what feeling hides underneath? When you feel procrastination's grip, ask, what emotion am I avoiding? When you respond with anger, ask, what wound seeks healing? These questions take you deeper than thought alone. They bring you to roots, and from there, you can plant something new. Chapter 4. The hidden convictions behind every pattern, every thought you generate isn't random. It may feel like words floating through consciousness, but each thought is a messenger carrying your deepest convictions' weight. Those convictions, most unconscious, shape your entire life experience. You may claim you want success, connection, or peace. But if your hidden convictions declare you're unworthy, unsafe, or incapable, your thoughts will sabotage every effort. The invisible foundation: this is why countless people live in inescapable cycles. They're not merely fighting thoughts. They're fighting the invisible conviction architecture, giving birth to those thoughts. Consider someone struggling with procrastination. Surface thought, I'll do it later. But beneath that lies hidden conviction. If I try and fail, I'll be judged. If I don't try, I can't fail. The conviction creates the thought. The thought creates behavior. Behavior creates results. Until conviction is exposed, the cycle repeats endlessly. Another person may feel unworthy in relationships. Thought, they don't really care about me. But beneath it, I'm not lovable. If people see the real me, they'll leave. This conviction colors every interaction, making even genuine affection feel false. Regardless of love received, the conviction filters it into doubt. The lens affects the human mind functions like a lens. Convictions are the tint on that lens. Two people can face identical situations but interpret them entirely differently because their lenses are colored by different convictions. Point one loses employment and thinks, this is opportunity for growth. Another loses employment and thinks, I'm worthless. The event is identical. The conviction determines meaning, and meaning determines destiny. The story of Veronica. Take Veronica's story. Since childhood, she carried a conviction that she was unworthy of affection. Every failed relationship seemed confirmation, but in therapy, she was asked to examine the conviction. Is it true that you're unworthy? Initially, she said yes, but reflecting, she remembered friends who treasured her, family members who supported her, moments when she'd given profound care. Gradually, she realized the conviction wasn't truth. It was a shadow cast by one painful rejection in childhood. When she questioned it, the shadow dissolved. She began relating differently because she perceived herself differently. This is the power of questioning hidden convictions. It doesn't erase the past, but rewrites the present. The shift you need: stop asking, why do I think this thought? And start asking, what conviction is giving birth to this thought? When you think, I cannot succeed, the conviction might be, success is for others, not for me. When you think, no one understands me, the conviction might be, I'm destined for isolation. When you think, I have no control, the conviction might be, life happens to me, not through me. These convictions are the true architects of your patterns. Only by naming them can you begin transformation. How to change a conviction, not by merely repeating the opposite. If your hidden conviction is, I'm unworthy, and you force yourself to say, I'm worthy 100 times daily, your mind will resist. Convictions aren't changed by force, they're changed by experience. When you take small actions contradicting the old conviction, you gather evidence for a new one. For example, if your conviction is, no one listens to me, begin speaking honestly in minor situations, and notice when people actually do listen. Each moment of evidence weakens the old conviction and strengthens a new. Convictions are like walls built from memory bricks. You cannot demolish them with one blow, but brick by brick, you can replace them with something stronger. The practice: write down one recurring thought limiting you. Then ask, what conviction lies behind this thought? Don't rush. Sit with it. When you find the conviction, ask, where did this originate? Do I still want to carry it? This single practice could become your journey's turning point. Chapter 5, Breaking the Cycle of Automatic Processing. Extended. Most of your existence unfolds on autopilot. Studies reveal that over 90% of daily thoughts are recycled from the previous day. You wake and identical loops commence. Concerns about resources, doubts about worth, rehearsals of old conversations, predictions of imagined failures. Like a river carving identical paths through stone, your mind travels grooves it traversed thousands of times. These grooves are cognitive patterns, and they become so familiar you mistake them for truth. The cycle feels natural, but it's not destiny. It's simply habit. The driver's journey: think of learning to drive initially. Every movement required focus, mirrors, pedals, steering. But after years, driving became automatic. You can travel considerable distances barely remembering the journey. Your thoughts function identically. Initially, every conviction was new, every interpretation fresh. But over time, repeated sufficiently, they became reflexes. Now, when someone criticizes you, your mind automatically plays a script. I'm not good enough. When facing challenge, it plays, I can't handle this. The thoughts feel instantaneous, but they're rehearsals from long ago. The danger of autopilot automatic thinking doesn't merely keep you unconscious. It blinds you to possibility. You cease questioning whether a thought is accurate. You cease imagining alternatives. You exist within the same narrow frame, even when life outside that frame overflows with options. It's like wearing tinted glasses so long you forget they're on your face. You believe the world simply possesses that color.to break free. You must first notice the glasses exist. Awareness is a fissure in the cycle. Why escape is difficult? The brain is designed for efficiency, not truth. It prefers shortcuts. Rather than analyzing every new event, it recycles old interpretations. This conserves energy but costs freedom. The mind craves certainty, even false certainty. Because uncertainty feels threatening, that's why automatic thoughts rush in so rapidly. They offer ready-made narratives. Even if the narrative harms you, this will fail, you're not enough, nothing will change. The brain isn't cruel, it's efficient. But efficiency without awareness becomes imprisonment. The story of Marcus. Consider Marcus, who struggled with social anxiety. Every time he entered a room, his mind declared, everyone is judging me. He believed this instantly because the thought felt automatic. But one day he decided to pause. He wrote the thought down. Everyone is judging me. He asked, is this fact or assumption? He looked around and noticed most people were focused on themselves. Gradually, he began recognizing the thought was a reality. It was pattern. With practice, the cycle weakened. The thought might still appear, but now he saw as echo, not command, the practice. Inserting space, this practice requires courage. Automatic thinking is comfortable, even when painful, because it feels familiar. Stepping out feels like entering the unknown, but the unknown is where freedom resides. When you cease running identical scripts, you can write new ones. Instead of I cannot, you can try what if I could. Instead of people will reject me, you can ask, what if some accept me? Instead of this always fails, you can say, this time might differ. Each new thought is like carving fresh paths in stone, creating new rivers where once only one flowed. Chapter 6, The Power of Awareness, Becoming the Observer. There arrives a moment when you realize you are not your thoughts. Until that moment, you've been swept away by every word appearing in consciousness. If your mind says you're weak, you believe it. If it says you'll fail, you obey. If it says no one cares, you feel the ache as absolute truth. But what if you could step back, even momentarily, and watch the thought instead of being trapped inside it? What if you could see the mind as storyteller and yourself as listener who chooses whether to believe the story? That shift is freedom's beginning. The fusion problem. Most people never make this discovery because they're fused with thoughts. They don't realize distance exists between the thinker and the witness. They believe every thought is command, every narrative is fact, every inner voice is reality. And so they're carried away, tossed like leaves in their own mind's wind. But awareness interrupts this storm. Awareness says, I see the thought. I'm watching it. I am not it. In that small space, choice is born. Metaphor, sky and clouds. Think of sky and clouds. Your thoughts are clouds, constantly moving, shifting, appearing, dissolving. Some are light and airy, some dark and heavy. But awareness is the sky itself, vast, open, untouched by passing forms. You may mistake yourself for the cloud, but truth is you're the sky. Clouds come and go, but the sky remains. Once you realize this, no thought can imprison you again. The story of Ethan. Let me share Ethan's story. He suffered from severe self-criticism. Daily, his mind bombarded him. You're a failure. You'll never be enough. For years, he believed these words and lived under their weight. Then during mindfulness practice, something changed. He noticed a voice, but instead of merging with it, he stepped back and said, I'm hearing a thought that says I'm a failure. That small shift, adding the phrase, I'm hearing a thought, created distance. Suddenly, the thought wasn't absolute truth. It was just noise in consciousness. With practice, he discovered the voice grew quieter and his freedom grew louder. The essence. This is becoming the observer's essence. It's not about stopping thoughts. The mind will always generate them. It's about changing your relationship with them. Instead of being prisoner, you become witness. Instead of reacting blindly, you respond with clarity. This is why awareness is a foundation of all emotional intelligence, all critical thinking, all personal transformation. Without awareness, you cannot choose. With awareness, every choice becomes possible. Why people resist? People resist awareness because it demands presence, and presence means feeling. When you step back from thoughts, you begin sensing emotions underneath. You notice fear, sadness, longing. Sometimes it feels overwhelming, so people choose distraction instead, scrolling, consuming, escaping. But avoidance is costly. Every time you refuse awareness, you strengthen old cycles. Every time you turn toward awareness, even if uncomfortable, you weaken them. Pain faced in awareness becomes growth. Pain avoided in distraction becomes chains. The practice, simple observation. Set aside 5 minutes to simply observe your mind. Sit quietly, close your eyes, and watch the thought stream. Don't try controlling them. Just notice. Say to yourself, here's a thought. Here's another. See how they rise and fall like waves on ocean. Feel the gap between them. The space of awareness holding them all. That space, that awareness, is your true self. It is vast, unshaken, free. Return to it again and again until it becomes your home. Chapter 7. Reframing Reality. The Art of Shifting Perspectives. Life doesn't change because circumstances change. Life changes because perspective changes. Two people can walk through identical storms, and one will curse the sky while the other will dance in the rain. The difference isn't in the storm. It's in the lens through which they perceive it. Most suffering isn't caused by reality itself, but by how the mind interprets reality. If you learn to shift perspective, you can transform obstacles into teachers, losses into lessons, setbacks into stepping stones. This is the art of reframing. The story of the bicycle. Think of a child learning to ride a bicycle. She falls once, and her mind says, I'm bad at this. If that thought becomes her perspective, she gives up. Another child falls and says, I'm learning. The fall is identical, but interpretation differs. One perspective closes the future. The other opens it. This is reframing's quiet power. It doesn't deny pain. It doesn't pretend challenges are easy. It simply chooses meaning that empowers instead of imprisons. Why people fail to reframe. Most people confuse perspective with truth. They believe their first interpretation is reality, when in fact it's only one possible frame. I lost my job. My life is over. That's one frame. But another frame is, I lost my job. Now I'm free to find something better. This breakup means I'm unlovable. That's one frame. Another is, this breakup means I can grow and discover deeper connection. Both interpretations are available, but most people choose the one reflecting their old patterns. Reframing requires awareness and courage, the willingness to pause, question, and choose a frame serving growth. The story of Edison. Take Thomas Edison, who experienced thousands of unsuccessful attempts before creating a working light bulb. When asked about his failures, he reframed them. I haven't failed. I've discovered 10,000 ways that don't work. That perspective gave him perseverance where others would have surrendered. The event, failure, was identical. The frame made it progress instead of defeat. That's the difference between those who rise and those who fall. Not luck, not talent, but the meaning they choose to give their experiences. The practice. You can practice reframing in your own life. Next time you face rejection, instead of saying, "This proves I'm unworthy," try, "This redirects me to something better." When you face criticism, instead of "They hate me," try, "This is feedback that can help me grow." When you face delay, instead of "I'm falling behind," try, "This is time to prepare more deeply." None of these frames deny reality. They simply expand it. They transform pain into wisdom. Metaphor, the mirror. Life is like a mirror. If you smile at it, it smiles back. If you frown, it frowns back. Reframing is choosing the expression you bring to the mirror. You cannot always control the reflection, but you can always control what you project. And over time, what you project shapes what you perceive. The challenge. What situation in your life right now feels heavy, hopeless, or impossible? Take it and write down your first thought. Then ask, what is another way I could see this? What meaning would make me stronger instead of weaker? Don't force yourself to believe it instantly. Just hold it, play with it, try it on like new clothing. Reframing is an art, and like any art, it improves with practice. Chapter 8. Breaking the illusion. Questioning automatic convictions most of the time. People don't think. They recycle. They replay. They repeat old scripts written by parents, teachers, culture, and past experiences. They don't realize that what feels like truth is often just conditioning. These automatic convictions run silently, shaping emotions, choices, and actions without resistance. You feel anxious before a new opportunity because somewhere in your past, you learned it's dangerous to stand out. You hesitate to express your perspective because an old voice whispers, "You're not intelligent enough." These convictions operate like shadows in consciousness, unseen but powerful. The tragedy is that most people never question them. They accept every inner statement as fact. I cannot succeed. People won't like me. I'm not enough. They don't see these as convictions. They see them as reality. And so they live constrained lives, never testing whether the walls they perceive are real or just painted illusions. But every wall in consciousness can be questioned. Every automatic conviction can be challenged. And when you challenge it, you often discover the prison door was never locked. Why convictions persist: the mind values certainty over truth. Certainty feels safe even when painful. If you believe I will fail, then you never risk trying, and so you avoid rejection's sting. The conviction hurts, but it protects you from greater pain, or so the mind believes. In this way, automatic convictions are like old armor, heavy, restrictive, unnecessary, but familiar till grow. You must remove the armor even if it feels vulnerable initially. Metaphor. The magician's trick consider magician's trick. The magician directs your attention one way while the real action happens elsewhere. Automatic convictions are mental illusions. They say, "Look here, this is truth." But when you step back and question, you realize the trick. The conviction only had power because you never examined it. Once exposed, it loses its grip. The practice. Interrogation, a powerful practice, is treating each conviction like a witness on trial. Imagine your thought saying, "You will never succeed." Don't argue immediately. Ask, is this always true? What is the evidence? Has there ever been a time when I did succeed? By interrogating the conviction, you weaken it. Most convictions crumble under honest questioning, and in the ruins, you discover freedom. The story of Iris since childhood. Iris carried conviction that she was intellectually inadequate. She held this conviction from when a teacher once called her slow-minded. As an adult, every time she made an error at work, her thought was, "See, I'm unintelligent." Her hidden conviction filtered the event into self-condemnation. But when she began noticing, she paused. She wrote down the conviction, "I am not intelligent." She asked, "Is this absolutely true? Who gave me this conviction? Does every piece of evidence support it?" She recalled moments when she solved problems creatively, when friends sought her counsel, when she mastered new skills. These memories became new building blocks. Gradually, the wall began crumbling and a new conviction formed. "I am capable of learning and growing." With this conviction, her thoughts shifted. Mistakes became lessons, not proof of inadequacy. The entire pattern changed. The application, this is critical thinking applied inward. Most people think critical thinking is about questioning external information, news, politics, arguments. But the deepest application is questioning your own consciousness. When you hear a thought, don't simply accept it. Ask, what conviction is behind this? Who gave me that conviction? Does it serve me today? Or is it an echo of yesterday? This practice is uncomfortable because it reveals how much of your life has been lived on borrowed convictions. But it's also liberating because it gives you the chance to choose your own. The truth about convictions, understand this. Convictions are not facts. They are conclusions your mind once drew from limited evidence. But evidence can change, and so can conclusions. You are not bound to your past convictions. You can choose new ones that empower instead of imprison. IT begins with awareness, continues with questioning, and solidifies through new experiences. The challenge begins noticing your thoughts today. Don't judge them. Don't fight them. Just notice. See the stories you tell yourself in moments of stress, in moments of opportunity, in moments of fear. Write them down and ask yourself, is this truth or is this just a pattern? That single question can change everything. Because once you recognize a hidden conviction, you're no longer bound by it. You're free to rebuild. Chapter 9. Emotional filters. How feelings shape perception of truth. Have you noticed how the same situation feels completely different depending on your emotional state? On a day when you're content, a stranger's silence feels harmless, almost invisible. But on a day when you're anxious, that same silence feels threatening, as if they're rejecting you. The world hasn't changed. The person hasn't changed. The only thing that changed is the emotional filter through which you're perceiving. Emotions are lenses, and they tint everything you see. The tragedy is that most people mistake the lens for reality. They think they're seeing truth when in fact they're only seeing their feelings projected onto the world. The subtle trap this is one of the most subtle traps of human consciousness. We assume perception is objective, that what we see and feel must accurately reflect the external world. But science, philosophy, and personal experience all point to the same fact. Perception is shaped as much by what's inside you as by what's outside you. When you're angry, the world looks hostile. When you're afraid, the world looks dangerous. When you're ashamed, the world looks judgmental. The world itself hasn't changed. Your filter has. This means that many of the truths you hold aren't truths at all. They're emotional projections. Why this is powerful once you understand this. You no longer have to be enslaved by your feelings. You can begin separating reality from the lens. You can notice, I'm not seeing the world as it is. I'm seeing it through the filter of fear or sadness or shame. That simple recognition changes everything. Instead of being consumed by the filter, you become aware of it. And awareness, as you've learned, is the first step to freedom. The story of Nathaniel considered Nathaniel, a young professional who constantly believed his colleagues disliked him. Every meeting felt tense. Every silence felt judgmental. Every small mistake felt magnified. He was living in a world where everyone seemed against him. But in therapy, he discovered he was carrying an old emotional filter from childhood. Years of being criticized by his mother had left him expecting rejection everywhere. Once he recognized this, he began to pause and ask, is this real or is this my filter speaking? To his surprise, many of his colleagues respected him deeply. The rejection was never there. It was only in the lens behind noticing the filter. He freed himself from years of unnecessary pain. How filters form. Emotional filters are built from repeated emotional experiences that a child who grows up feeling abandoned develops a filter of abandonment, expecting people to leave. A teenager who experiences bullying develops a filter of humiliation, expecting ridicule in every interaction. An adult who experiences betrayal develops a filter of distrust, suspecting everyone's motives. Each painful event colors the lens a little darker until the person no longer sees clearly. They're not reacting to the present. They're reacting to the past projected onto the present. The self-fulfilling cycle, the danger of living through filters, is that they become self-fulfilling. If you believe people will reject you, you act guarded, defensive, or distant. Others sense this and may indeed withdraw, confirming your belief. If you believe the world is dangerous, you live in fear, avoiding opportunities. As a result, you never succeed, confirming the belief that life is stacked against you. The filter creates behavior. Behavior creates outcomes. Outcomes reinforce the filter. This is the vicious cycle of emotional lenses. The hope: filters can change just as you can remove tinted glasses and see the world more clearly. You can learn to recognize and soften emotional filters distorting your vision. IT begins with self-inquiry. When you feel strong emotions, pause and ask, what filter am I looking through right now? Is this the lens of fear, shame, anger, or is it reality itself? Even asking the question loosens the filter's grip. You realize, this is not truth. This is a feeling coloring my truth. Metaphor: the glass of water. Imagine you're holding a glass of water. If the water is clear, you can see through it easily. If the water is muddy, everything you see through it is distorted. Your mind is a glass, and your emotions are the water. When the water is muddy with unresolved emotions, the world looks dark and unclear. When the water is clear, you see reality as it is. Emotional mastery, then, is the art of cleaning the water, processing emotions instead of letting them cloud your perception. The practice: emotional labeling. One way to do this is emotional labeling. Neuroscientists have found that simply naming a feeling reduces its intensity. If you're overwhelmed with anger, saying this is anger activates parts of the brain that calm the emotional storm. By labeling the filter, you create space between yourself and the feeling. Instead of I am angry, you shift to I am experiencing anger. Instead of I am worthless, you shift to I am experiencing shame. That small linguistic shift is a massive psychological shift. It turns identity into observation, and observation weakens the filter. Another method: reality testing. When you catch yourself interpreting through a filter, ask for evidence. If you think, everyone hates me, ask, who exactly? What proof do I have? Is there anyone who does like me? By searching for facts, you challenge the illusion. Filters thrive on assumptions. They dissolve under evidence. The story of Nathaniel continued. As Nathaniel practiced questioning his filter, he began testing his assumptions in real life. Instead of withdrawing when he felt judged, he asked colleagues for feedback. To his surprise, the feedback was often positive and constructive. The more he tested reality, the more the old filter rejection lost its grip. Over time, he built a new filter, not a fear but a curiosity. Instead of assuming the worst, he learned to ask questions. That one change transformed his career and his relationships. The deeper truth emotional filters will always exist. You cannot live without them, but you can choose them. You can decide whether to see the world through the lens of fear or through the lens of possibility. You can choose whether to interpret setbacks as proof of failure or as training for resilience. You cannot control life's events, but you can control the filter through which you see them, and that control changes everything. The challenge: what is your dominant filter? Do you look at life through suspicion, shame, fear, or anger? Or do you look through curiosity, gratitude, hope, and compassion? Your filter shapes your world. Change the filter, and you change your life. Chapter 10. The Loop of Overthinking. Escaping the cage of endless thought, there's a peculiar suffering that modern people know too well. It's not physical hunger or bodily pain. It's the torment of consciousness that won't stop spinning. Overthinking, rumination, endless loops of what if and why did I and what will they think. These thoughts are invisible chains, wrapping tighter every time you replay the same narrative. They don't move you forward. They don't resolve the issue. Yet they consume your energy as if you were running a marathon while standing still. You collapse at day's end exhausted, but you've gone nowhere. The seduction overthinking is seductive because it feels like problem solving. The mind whispers, if I just think about this enough, I'll find an answer. But in reality, overthinking isn't about solving. It's about avoiding. It's the mind's way of holding on to control when it feels powerless at BY spinning in circles. It postpones the risk of action, the risk of failure, the risk of rejection. The mind convinces you that you're being productive when in fact you're paralyzed, and paralysis has a cost. It steals time, joy, and opportunities that will never return. Why people get trapped the brain is wired for survival, not peace. In ancient times, overanalyzing every sound in the wilderness might have saved you from predators. Today, the same mechanism runs wild in offices, classrooms, and bedrooms. Instead of spotting dangers, you're spotting imaginary disasters. What if they laugh at me? What if I lose everything? What if I'm not enough? These imagined threats trigger the same survival response as real danger, flooding you with stress and locking you into the loop. The brain doesn't know the difference between reality and imagination. It reacts identically. Metaphor. The hamster will imagine a hamster wheel. The hamster runs furiously, heart pounding, legs burning. But the cage never changes. That's overthinking. The more you run, the more trapped you become. The only way out is not to run faster. It's to step off the wheel. But stepping off feels terrifying because the mind believes the wheel is safety. If I stop thinking, something bad will happen. Yet the opposite is true. The wheel itself is the suffering. The cage is not life. It's the endless replay of life inside your head. The story of Lydia. Consider Lydia. She had a chance to present her research to senior executives, a dream opportunity. But the night before, she stayed awake for hours rehearsing every possibility. What if I forget a slide? What if they ask a question I can't answer? What if they think I'm incompetent? She imagined failure so vividly that by morning she was trembling, exhausted, and unfocused. When she stood to present, her voice shook. The irony was cruel. Her fear of failure, rehearsed through overthinking, created the very failure she feared. Later, when she began practicing mindfulness, Lydia learned to catch the loop earlier. Instead of rehearsing disasters, she learned to breathe, ground herself, and prepare with clarity. The loop lost its grip because she learned to step off the wheel. How to escape the first step is recognition. Most people don't realize they're overthinking until they're drowning. They believe their mental replay is necessary preparation. But if the same thought has cycled more than twice without progress, you're no longer preparing. You're overthinking. Awareness of the loop is the first crack in the cage. The second step, redirection overthinking, is energy misused. If you can redirect that energy into action, the loop dissolves. Instead of asking, what if I fail? Ask, what is the smallest step I can take right now? Action breaks thought loops like a hammer shattering chains. Fear cannot survive in motion. Doubt cannot strangle a person who's already walking forward. Another tool, writing when thoughts swirl endlessly in consciousness. Put them on paper. The page becomes a container holding what your brain cannot. Once you see the word before you, their power diminishes. The fog of thought condenses into sentences, and you realize many are repetitive, irrational, or trivial. What once felt like a storm becomes manageable droplets. The act of writing is the act of stepping off the wheel. The practice, presence overthinking, thrives on the past and future. It replays what already happened or rehearses what might happen. But in the present moment, the loop has no fuel. Try it. Bring your attention fully into your breath, your body, the sensations around you. Notice sound of the room, the feeling of your hands, the rhythm of your inhale and exhale. For a few seconds, the loop halts. It may start again, but each time you bring yourself back, you weaken its control. Presence is not escape. It's the ground beneath the wheel. The more you practice it, the easier it is to step off whenever the spinning begins. Reframing. And use strength, there's also reframing. Instead of seeing overthinking as weakness, see it as unused strength. The same mental energy that traps you can liberate you if channeled correctly. A person who overthinks is not weak. They're creative, analytical, deeply aware. Their mind is powerful. It simply needs direction. Once you learn to redirect that energy into purposeful thought or decisive action, the loop becomes a ladder instead of a cage. Metaphor. Fire, think it like this. Fire can burn down a structure or warm a home. The difference isn't in the fire, it's in how it's managed. Overthinking is fire without control. But with awareness, redirection, and presence, that same fire can become clarity, creativity, and wisdom. The loop doesn't need to destroy you. It can be transformed. The challenge next time you notice yourself looping, stop and name it. Say aloud, I am overthinking. Then take one step of action. Send the message. Write the plan. Make the call. Do the thing you're afraid of. Even if it's imperfect, action breaks the loop. With practice, you'll train your brain to trust motion over rumination, clarity over confusion. Chapter 11. Confirmation Bias. Seeing only what you expect to see. One of the most deceptive patterns of human thought is a tendency to look not for truth, but for confirmation. The mind loves to be right, and so it hunts for evidence supporting what it already believes while ignoring evidence that challenges it. This is called confirmation bias, and it quietly shapes everything from your relationships to your career to how you see yourself. It's why two people can read the same article and come away with completely different interpretations. It's why arguments rarely change anyone's mind. It's why you often feel stuck in the same patterns, because you're seeing only what you expect to see. The survival mechanism at its core, confirmation bias is a survival mechanism. The brain doesn't want to be wrong, because being wrong once meant danger. If you believed the berries were poisonous and you were right, you lived. If you believed they were safe and you were wrong, you died. Over thousands of years, the mind has developed a preference for evidence validating existing beliefs because that feels safe. But what once kept us alive now keeps us constrained. The modern world requires growth, adaptation, and open-mindedness. Confirmation bias resists all three. Metaphor. The spotlight, think of it like a spotlight. Wherever you aim it, you see. Wherever you don't aim it, darkness remains. If your belief is, I'm unlucky, your mind shines a spotlight on every failure, every rejection, every missed opportunity. The successes fade into darkness. If your belief is, people cannot be trusted, your mind highlights every betrayal and ignores every act of loyalty. The spotlight doesn't show reality. It shows only what the belief demands. And so your world becomes a reflection not of truth, but of expectation. The story of Elijah. Consider Elijah, a young man who believed he was terrible at socializing. At gatherings, he would scan the room and immediately notice people who weren't paying attention to him. He would fixate on every moment of awkward silence. Every glance he interpreted as disapproval. Meanwhile, he completely overlooked the smiles, the kind words, the genuine laughter he created. His mind filtered reality to confirm his belief. As a result, he felt anxious and withdrew more, which in turn created the very social struggles he feared. Only when Elijah began challenging his bias, writing down both positive and negative interactions after events, did he realize how skewed his perception had been. Gradually, he built a new narrative. I am capable of connecting. The shift wasn't magic. It was a result of shining his spotlight differently. The insidious danger confirmation bias creates self-fulfilling prophecies. If you believe you're destined to fail, you will notice only signs of failure. Those signs will discourage you, leading to half-hearted effort, which results in failure. And then the belief is proven. The cycle repeats, not because reality demanded it, but because your attention enforced it. How to break the cycle? The first step is humility. You must admit that your perception is not always truth. You must accept that your mind is biased, that it looks for comfort more than accuracy. This requires courage because the ego resists being wrong. But humility opens a door to growth. Once you admit you might be wrong, you can begin looking for evidence that challenges your beliefs instead of only evidence that supports them. The practice. Deliberate questioning when you catch yourself thinking, this always happens to me. Pause and ask, is that really true? What evidence do I have of the opposite? When you assume someone dislikes you, ask, what proof do I have? Could there be another explanation? By actively searching for disconfirming evidence, you begin weakening the bias. You learn to see a fuller picture instead of a narrow spotlight. Metaphor. Climbing the mountain, think of it like climbing a mountain. If you stand on one side, you see only one landscape. If you climb higher or walk around, the view changes. Reality is vast. Confirmation bias traps you on one side of the mountain. Questioning moves you higher until you see with greater clarity. Another practice. Expose yourself to different perspectives. Read books that challenge your worldview. Listen to people you disagree with. Seek feedback from those you trust. It will feel uncomfortable because the ego hates contradiction, but discomfort is the soil where growth takes root. If you only surround yourself with agreement, you'll never see beyond your own reflection. The scientific model considers science itself. The foundation of scientific progress is not confirmation, but falsification. Scientists form hypotheses and then actively try to disproving them. If the hypothesis survives repeated challenges, it becomes stronger. What if you treated your own beliefs the same way? Instead of clinging to them, you test them. You welcome challenges. You grow not by being right, but by becoming clearer. Metaphor. The courtroom, imagine your mind as a courtroom. Confirmation bias is like a corrupt judge who only allows evidence for one side. The verdict is always predictable. Live wisely. You must become a fair judge. You must allow all evidence, even when it contradicts your assumptions. Only then can you render a verdict based on truth instead of bias. The challenge, what belief has shaped your life the most? Perhaps it's, I am not good enough. Perhaps it's, people cannot be trusted. Perhaps it's, I will never change. Notice how your mind has collected years of evidence to prove this belief. Then dare to ask, what evidence exists against it? Write it down. Let it grow. Feed the disconfirming side until the old bias cracks. This exercise may feel unnatural at first, but it's the beginning of liberation. The truth, the world you live in, is not only the world outside. It's the world filtered through your beliefs. Confirmation bias means you might not be living in truth at all, but in a carefully constructed echo chamber, break free. You must love truth more than comfort. You must choose growth over certainty. You must be willing to be wrong so that you can become right in a deeper way. Chapter 12. The trap of cognitive dissonance. When beliefs and actions collide, there's a quiet war that happens inside every human being, a battle between what you believe and what you do. When your actions align with your values, you feel at peace. But when they clash, something deep within you begins to ache. That ache is called cognitive dissonance. It's the mental tension that arises when you hold two conflicting truths at once. It's the voice that whispers, I want to be healthy, while your hands reach for processed food. It's the guilt of saying, I value honesty, while telling a lie. It's the discomfort of declaring, I want meaningful relationships, while ignoring the people who care about you. The universe experience cognitive dissonance is not rare, it's universal. And the way you respond to it determines whether you grow or stay trapped. The mind hates dissonance. It craves harmony. Even if that harmony is built on illusion that when faced with conflict, the brain will do anything to reduce the discomfort. Sometimes it changes the action. You stop smoking because you believe health matters, but often it changes the belief instead. Smoking helps me relax, so it's not really that bad. The danger is that instead of transforming behavior, many people twist reality to avoid guilt. In doing so, they silence the voice of truth and settle for the comfort of lies. Why this happens, acknowledging the gap between belief and action, is painful. It forces you to admit you're not living as you say you want to live. The ego resists this admission because it feels like failure. So it invents stories to protect itself. Everyone compromises a little. I'll start tomorrow. At least I'm not as bad as others. These stories reduce dissonance, but they also reduce integrity. Gradually, you begin living not as your highest self, but as a compromise. The story of Vincent. Consider Vincent. He always told himself that family came first. He believed he was a devoted father, but when work demands increased, he stayed late every night. Missing dinners, missing games, missing milestones. When his children complained, he justified it. I'm working for them. Sacrifice now means security later. But the truth was harder. He was avoiding the discomfort of slowing down. He was addicted to achievement. His belief and his behavior clashed. Instead of adjusting his actions, he rewrote the story. Years later, when his children grew distant, the cost of that dissonance became undeniable. Vincent could not buy back the time he lost. The power of dissonance, this is cognitive dissonance's power. It doesn't just create discomfort. It reshapes lives if unaddressed. It can push you into denial, hypocrisy, or deep regret. But if faced with courage, it can become the engine of transformation. Because dissonance is not your enemy. It's your inner compass screaming for alignment. It's proof that you care about truth. The discomfort is a signal that something better is possible. How to respond wisely, the first step is awareness. You must listen to that inner ache instead of silencing it. When you feel guilt, shame, or discomfort, ask, what belief of mine is being contradicted by my actions right now? Don't run from the tension. Name it. Expose it. The moment you identify the source, the fog begins to lift. The second step, honesty, admit the gap without excuse. Say to yourself, I say I want health, but I am not exercising. I say I value kindness, but I spoke harshly. This is not weakness, it's strength. Honesty is the bridge between dissonance and growth. Without it, you'll stay stuck in self-deception. With it, you can begin rebuilding integrity. The third step, alignment. Choose one small action that brings your behavior closer to your belief. Don't try fixing everything at once. That only deepens dissonance when you stumble. Instead, start where you are. If you value learning, read one page today. If you value health, take one walk. If you value family, make one phone call. Each step reduces the gap. Each step quiets the war. Each step restores peace. Metaphor. The guitar string. Imagine a guitar string pulled too tight. The sound it makes is harsh and unbalanced. But when tuned, the string resonates beautifully. Cognitive dissonance is a harsh sound, the tension of misalignment. Your task is not to cut the string, but to tune it, to bring your beliefs and actions back into harmony so that your life creates music instead of noise. The comfort trap. Many people never escape dissonance because they confuse comfort with truth. They avoid discomfort at all costs, even if it means betraying themselves. But growth requires discomfort. The tension is not punishment, it's guidance. It's life urging you to live more authentically. The pain of dissonance is the price of becoming whole. The challenge where in your life are your beliefs and actions colliding? Where you feel guilt, shame, or regret. Those are not flaws, they're invitations. Invitations to realign, to choose differently, to stop pretending and start living. If you accept the invitation, you will feel lighter, freer, more at peace. If you ignore it, the ache will grow until it becomes regret. The choice is yours. Chapter 13. The mirror projection. Seeing yourself in others. There is a strange phenomenon in human relationships that few notice but everyone experiences. We think we're judging others, but often we're only seeing ourselves. The anger we direct at another person, the envy that stings, the irritation that flares. These are not random. They are reflections. What bothers you most in others is often what you secretly fear, deny, or struggle within yourself. The definition. This is projection. The mind's way of offloading its discomfort by placing it on someone else. It feels easier to criticize another than to confront the hidden parts of yourself. Think of the friend who constantly accuses others of being self-centered. Look closely, and you may find that he too struggles with self-centeredness, but cannot bear to admit it. Or the colleague who always suspects others of dishonesty. Often she has wrestled with her own temptation to bend the truth. Projection is a mirror showing us not the world as it is, but the world as filtered through our unresolved wounds. Why we project? We project because facing our own flaws feels threatening. The ego wants to preserve its image of adequacy or perfection. So when a flaw arises, the mind pushes it outward. It's not me, it's them. This defense mechanism reduces inner conflict, but increases outer conflict. It creates blame, misunderstanding, and broken relationships. What you deny in yourself, you will fight in others. The story of Helena. Consider Helena, a manager who constantly complained about her team being disorganized. She would scrutinize their every move, criticize small mistakes, and accuse them of lacking discipline. But when she finally stopped and reflected, she saw the truth. Her own life was chaotic. She missed deadlines, lost track of commitments, and felt ashamed. Instead of facing her disorder, she projected it onto her team. When she began addressing her own habits, something remarkable happened. Her frustration with others diminished. The mirror revealed what she needed to heal. Positive projection. Projection isn't always negative. Sometimes we project our potential onto others. You admire someone's courage because you have that same seed within you waiting to grow. You're inspired by someone's compassion because it reflects your own capacity for care. Positive projections remind you of what you can become, just as negative ones reveal what you must confront. Every projection is feedback. Every projection is feedback, an invitation to self-awareness. The danger comes when you live unconscious of this mirror. If you believe all your judgments are objective truth, you will spend your life fighting phantoms. You will blame others for what belongs to you. You will miss opportunities to grow because you're too busy pointing outward. But when you wake up to the mirror, every interaction becomes a chance to understand yourself more deeply. How to break free. The first step is noticing your strongest reactions. Whenever you feel intense anger, irritation, or envy, pause. Ask yourself, what does this say about me? What part of myself am I unwilling to face? This question does excuse others' behavior, but it brings your attention back to what you can control, your own growth. The second step, owning your shadow. Everyone has traits they dislike or deny. Perhaps you struggle with control, jealousy, pride, or avoidance. When you deny these traits, they don't disappear, they hide, and then they project. But when you name them, accept them, and work with them, their power fades. Wholeness comes not from pretending to be flawless, but from integrating every part of yourself. The third step, compassion. When you realize others are projecting too, you stop taking their judgment so personally. If someone calls you arrogant, it may reveal more about their own insecurity than about your reality. If someone envies you, it may reflect their unacknowledged potential. Seeing this doesn't mean you ignore criticism, but you no longer absorb it blindly. You listen, you reflect, and you release what isn't yours. Metaphor, the hall of mirrors. Imagine walking through a hall of mirrors at a carnival. Some mirrors stretch your body. Some shrink it. Some twist it into strange shapes. At first, you might panic, thinking something is wrong with you. But then you remember, it's just a reflection, not reality. Life is the same. People show you mirrors, distorted by their own projections and your own. The task is to see clearly, not to be fooled by the reflection. Your greatest teacher. Projection can be your greatest teacher if you let it. Next time you feel judgment rising, stop. Instead of asking what is wrong with them, ask, what is this mirror showing me about myself? The answer might sting, but it will set you free. Because the more you own your shadow, the less power it has to control you. And the more you recognize your light in others, the more you can grow into it. Chapter 14, The Mindset Reset. Choosing alignment over illusion. There comes a point in every journey of self-discovery when reflection is no longer optional. It is required. You can no longer hide behind excuses, no longer silence the whispers of your own conscience. That point is now. This is not just another chapter. It's a mirror, a challenge, and an invitation. You have traveled through thought patterns, biases, dissonances, and projections. You have seen how your mind both protects and imprisons you. But none of that matters if you don't pause now and reset. That a life unexamined will always repeat its cycles. A life examined can break free. Reset begins with brutal honesty. Look at your life as it truly is, not as you pretend it to be. Where you lie to yourself? Where do your beliefs and actions contradict each other? Where do you choose comfort over truth? These questions are not meant to shame you. They are meant to wake you. Because the greatest tragedy is not failure, but unconsciousness. To drift through life without ever asking why, without ever questioning if you're living as you claim you want to live. That is to die long before your body does. Honesty hurts, but it heals. Illusion feels safe, but it kills. The next step, clarity. Write down your standards, not vague wishes, but clear boundaries for how you will live. What do you stand for? What will you no longer tolerate? What matters so deeply to you that you are willing to endure discomfort, sacrifice, and struggle for it? Most people never define their standards. They drift with whatever current is strongest, the opinions of friends, the demands of work, the expectations of society. But when you have no standards, you have no self. Reset means reclaiming your identity. It means saying, this is who I am, this is how I live, and nothing will make me betray it. Then comes courage. Once you define your standards, life will test them. You'll be tempted to fall back into old patterns, to choose ease over integrity. Your biases will whisper. Your dissonance will ache. Your projections will distract you. The reset is not a one-time event. It is a daily decision. Every morning, you must choose alignment again. Every night, you must ask, did I live true today? The work is relentless, but so is the reward. Each day you honor your standards, you grow stronger. Each time you compromise, you shrink. Metaphor. The garden, imagine your mind as a garden. For years, invasive plants have grown unchecked. Beliefs planted by others, habits formed without awareness, fears rooted deep. The reset is not about ignoring the invasive growth. It is about removing it one plant at a time and cultivating seeds of your choosing. Seeds of discipline, courage, compassion. Truth.at first. The invasive plants may return. Old patterns are stubborn. But if you persist, watering your standards, protecting your values, gradually, the garden transforms. What was once wild and choking becomes fertile and alive. Your mind becomes a place where clarity blooms instead of confusion, where purpose grows instead of fear. This is not easy, you will resist. The ego will fight to preserve its illusions. The body will crave the comfort of old habits. People around you may not understand, because your reset threatens the patterns they still cling to. But remember this. Every breakthrough feels like betrayal to the old self. You are not betraying yourself. You are shedding the version of you that no longer serves. The discomfort is proof that you are changing. The hard questions now is the time to ask yourself the hard questions. What belief have you carried too long that no longer serves you? What habit has controlled you while you pretended to control it? What standard have you lowered so often that you barely recognize yourself anymore? Answer honestly. Write it down. And then decide, today, not tomorrow, what new standard will replace it. Your reset is a decision. Your reset is not a dream. It is a decision. And let me be clear, this is not about perfection. You will fail. You will stumble. You will fall back into old patterns at times. But the reset is not erased by failure. It is renewed by persistence. Every time you realign, you grow stronger. Every time you choose truth over illusion, you reclaim more of yourself. Over time, the gap between who you are and who you want to be will shrink. And one day, you will wake up and realize you are living in harmony. You are whole. The challenge tonight, before you sleep, write down 3 standards you refuse to compromise anymore. They do not need to be grand. They need to be true. Perhaps it's, I will speak with honesty even when it costs me. Or, I will care for my body every day because my health matters. Or, I will stop apologizing for existing and start showing up fully. These are not rules, they are promises. Promises to yourself, to your future, to the life you deserve. Keep them and you will reset. Break them and you will feel the ache of dissonance again. The choice is yours. Chapter 15, the final call. Become the author of your own mind. There's a moment in every journey where words are no longer enough. Where the theories, the insights, the lessons all point toward one truth, action. You have traveled through the hidden corridors of consciousness. You have seen the traps of bias, the chains of overthinking, the ache of dissonance, the mirrors of projection. You have stood face to face with your own patterns, and you have learned that thought can be both prison and key. But now you must decide. Will you return to sleep, or will you awaken fully? Will you drift, or will you direct? This is a final call. The passenger's life. For too long, many live as passengers in their own lives. They let old beliefs drive the vehicle. Old habits hold the steering wheel. Old fears dictate the destination. And when the road ends, they wonder why they never arrived where they dreamed. But here's the truth. You are not meant to be a passenger. You are meant to be the author, the driver, the creator of your own mind and destiny. No bias, no fear, no thought pattern has more power than the choice you make right now. Metaphor, the book. Think of life as a book. Every day is a page. Most people let others write their story. Their parents, their culture, their past. They repeat old chapters until the pages blur into sameness. But you have a pen in your hand. You always did. The question is whether you will use it. Will you continue copying old scripts? Or will you write something bold, something true, something alive? The final call is to write, to claim authorship of the only book that truly matters. Your own. Mastery is not control. Understand this. Mastery is not about controlling every thought. That is impossible. Mastery is about directing the flow, like a sailor who cannot control the wind but can adjust the sails. You cannot silence every bias, every fear, but you can choose where you steer. You can choose whether your thoughts carry you toward despair or toward strength. You can choose whether the storms of life sink you or shape you. The power has always been yours. The danger of hesitation. The danger is hesitation. Every time you tell yourself, I will start tomorrow, you strengthen the cage. Tomorrow becomes next week. Next week becomes next year. And then one day you wake up with nothing but regret. The graveyards are full of people who planned to change but never did. Do not join them. What beginning looks like. If you hear these words now, let today be the line in the sand. The day you stop postponing. The day you begin. What does beginning look like? It is not dramatic. It is not a grand speech or a perfect plan. It is one step, one act of alignment, one small promise kept. That is how transformation begins, not with noise, but with a whisper of action. Over time, the whisper becomes a roar. Do not wait for courage to arrive fully formed. Courage is built in motion. Step and strength will meet you. You are not alone. Remember, you are not alone in this. Every human struggles with the same patterns. The biases that blind you, the projections that trick you, the dissonance that aches, they are universal. But so is a capacity to rise above them. Millions before you have broken free, and millions after you will. You stand in a long line of seekers, warriors of consciousness, builders of truth. You are part of something bigger than yourself. Honor that lineage. Add your name to it through your actions. Looking back, picture this moment years from now. You look back at today. What will you see? Will you see another day of drifting? Or will you see the day you decided to live awake? That choice is in your hands now. No one else can make it for you. Not your teachers, not your friends, not even these words. This book can open the door, but only you can walk through it. The final call. So here is my final call. Stop hiding. Stop waiting. Stop telling yourself stories that shrink you. Step into your mind with courage and claim it. Set your standards. Break your loops. Question your biases. Face your projections. Align your actions with your deepest values. Lie not half asleep, but fully awake. The world does not need another shadow of potential. It needs the real you. Whole, alive, unafraid. The belief. If you have come this far, I believe in you. I believe you are ready. Not because you feel ready, but because you are here. The desire to change is proof enough. Do not let that desire die in thought. Turn it into movement, into reality, into a life that will echo long after you are gone. The answer, you're not missing anything. You're not broken. You're not late. You already have enough to begin. The difference now is, will you honor what you carry? Will you stop waiting and start becoming? For me, the answer is yes, and I hope it is for you too. The call has been given. The question remains, will you answer? Closing reflection. If you've made it to this point, you've probably realized something fundamental. The architecture of your consciousness has been built over years, but it can be redesigned starting today. Every pattern you've examined, automatic processing, emotional filters, hidden convictions, cognitive dissonance, projection, confirmation bias, these are not permanent structures. They are habits of mind, and habits can be transformed. The journey of mastering your thought patterns is not a destination, but a continuous practice. It requires awareness to notice when old patterns emerge, courage to question what you've always believed, honesty to admit where you've been living an illusion, persistence to realign every time you drift, compassion for yourself as you navigate this complex work. This is not about achieving perfection or eliminating all negative thoughts. It's about developing a conscious relationship with your own mind, becoming the observer rather than the prisoner, the author rather than the character trapped in someone else's script. The power has always been yours. Now it's time to use it.